Alright everyone, so in the previous video we created clones of the bat so that multiple bats could appear on the same level. But we found that when we zapped them with the lightning, if we zapped any of the bats, then all of the bats would disappear. And we don't want that. So the first thing to do here is to try to figure out, well, why does that happen? And it's actually quite straightforward. So what happens is we've got quite a simple system in place for zapping opponents. So here in Lightning, we've got this code here that says zap foe. And so this is for the lightning. It says if the lightning is touching the current enemy, so if the lightning is touching the bat, then hide the lightning so the lightning disappears, having zapped the bat. And then broadcast, tell the bat to vanish. And so going back to the bat, we've got this code here. It says when I receive, tell the bat to vanish, then increase the score, hide the bat, and spawn the bat. Now, what happens is when this message comes in, every single bat receives it. So they all receive tell bat to vanish. And so they all do this. They all broadcast increment score, they all hide the bat, and they all spawn the bat. And so that's why everybody does it. Everybody disappears. So when one bat gets hit, the message gets broadcast to all the bats, and then they all disappear. So the first thing you might think of doing is kind of wrapping this in a condition that checks whether this is the bat that's being addressed. And so one way we can do that is we can say, if I'm touching the lightning, where is it? Lightning. Oh, how do I do that? Equals. So, sorry. If I'm touching the lightning, then do this. So what that would do is it will say basically the lightning will broadcast the message, and then all the bats would receive the message. And then each of the bats would say, well, wait, am I touching the lightning? No? Okay, well then this message is not for me. And then the only bat that would respond is the one that is actually touching the lightning, and that's the one that increments the score, hides itself, and then respawns. Now, I'm going to tell you now that this doesn't work. If you try this out, what's going to happen is none of the bats disappear. All of a sudden now, they're immune to your lightning. The lightning entirely stops working. As you can see, the lightning isn't doing any damage to the bats at all. So why doesn't this work? Well, the thing is that's happening here is the zap says, hey, if I'm touching the current enemy, then the first thing I do is hide. And then I broadcast this message. So by the time the bat receives this message, the lightning's already hidden. And so when it goes, hey, am I touching the lightning? The answer is going to be no for all of the bats, because none of the bats are touching the lightning, because the lightning's hidden. Now, one way to try to fix this is to just rearrange the order here so it broadcasts first. But unfortunately, this still isn't fast enough. You still have the danger that the lightning is going to disappear before you have chance to check whether it's touching the bat. Now, one kind of hacky way to fix that would be to kind of stick in a wait here, and that'll probably help. I mean, we can try that out.
Ouch! Yum yum. Yum yum.
That's probably the simplest solution. It's a bit hacky though. You're kind of relying on the wait being enough time and nothing kind of happening in the browser or the app that slows anything down and kind of messes up the time. You're kind of allowing the lightning to exist a little bit longer for all the opponents than it needs to. So maybe we can do something a little bit cleaner. So this is just a little bit more complicated, but I think it's better. So what we can do is we can say, okay, for everybody except the bat, just hide, because there's no multiple opponents for anyone else. So if not current enemy equals bat, then just hide. But if it's the bat, then don't hide. Instead, when I receive, so new message, hide, lightning, then hide. So now what we're going to do is, if the current enemy is equals bat, then we're going to get the bat to send a message saying, okay, I've disappeared now, so it's time for you to disappear. And when it receives that message, hide lightning, it's going to hide. So when I receive tell bat to vanish, if I'm touching the lightning, broadcast increment score, hide the bat, and then hide the lightning. Let's put it first. Okay, so let's try that out. Good.
Yum yum.
They're both disappearing individually, so that seems to work. Okay, so let's leave it there and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for listening, and if you find this video useful, please hit like and subscribe.